Today on History's Tech, we are looking at the descendant of the A-20 Havoc, the A-26 Invader. This World War II light bomber and ground attack aircraft was essentially an upgraded version of the A-20 and was designed to be its successor. However, it was designed for adaptability, and from there, it would go on to have a career that expanded beyond World War II and into the 1990s. But let's go ahead and look at the A-26 Invader. Now, at the time of its inception, the A-26 was designed specifically to be the successor aircraft for the A-20 Havoc, and in fact, it was partially designed by Ed Heinemann, who designed the A-20. However, two new designers were brought in, Robert Donovan and Ted Smith, and the idea was to take the A-20 design, add a new laminar flow airfoil wing to this design, redoing the aerodynamics to even increase the speed even more. Now, because they already had the design of the A-20, development of the A-26 actually went rather fast, with the first prototype, the AX-26, flying in July 1942. And just like its predecessor, pilots commented on how easy it was to handle, that it had excellent performance, but it ran into its first problem. The engines actually overheated rather quickly. It was also found that the nose wheel was structurally inadequate and could actually collapse during landings. So they had to go back to the drawing board on a few things. They redesigned the engine cowling, they eliminated the propeller spinners during the production aircraft, and they strengthened the nose wheel in order to make this a better aircraft. Now, one additional feature they came up with for this particular aircraft was that the nose cone could actually be removed on the aircraft. And the reason for this was to make a dual purpose aircraft. The A-26B models were going to be called the gun nose variant. And basically, they were going to use an assortment of 50 calibers, 37 millimeters, 20 millimeters. They even had an idea for an experimental 75 millimeter pack howitzer on this. And later on, they just went to an assortment of 50 calibers inside the nose. And this would be an attack variant designed for ground attack. The A-26C model would have a glass nose, and this was designed for a bomber. So they would have a bombardier inside the nose and use this for precision bombing, utilizing a Norden bomb sight. And here we see the beginnings of the adaptability and why there were more than 20 military variants of this aircraft. Now, because the Invader was built basically during the middle of World War II, it really didn't see action until 1944, where it was discovered due to the downward view of the nose cone section on the B model, or the gun nose variant. It really made it hard for them to try to utilize it as a ground attack aircraft. And so the Air Force at the time really didn't want it. It just didn't make any sense to utilize it. And they basically told them that for no reason whatsoever did they want this aircraft. And they actually wanted the A-20 instead. And so very limited operations will actually happen for the United States Army Air Force utilizing the A-26. Now, it was deployed later to Europe. Now, the 9th Air Force in Europe actually tested the B models and the C models, and they were actually very happy with the C models and wanted them to replace their A-20s and their B-26s, the aircraft that the A-26 would later be confused with. And overall, they actually started converting their A-26Bs into C models for light bombing missions. And it actually did much better in Europe than it did in the Pacific theater. And with honestly such a mediocre start to its career, it could have really quickly been just eliminated and removed from service as the now United States Air Force began to transition to jet aircraft. However, it is its post-World War II career that really gives the A-26 its legacy. And here's actually where the confusion around the name B-26, A-26 comes about. Once the United States Air Force became the Air Force, they redesignated the A-26 Invader the B-26 Invader. And then a few years later, they went back to calling it an A-26. And then the final version of the aircraft would be called a B-26 again. And then it goes back and forth multiple times. So there's kind of some understanding of the confusion. Now, it went to work with the Strategic Air Command, being utilized as a reconnaissance aircraft, a light attack aircraft. And when the Korean War rolls around, it is one of the early bombers there fighting at the time. And the aircraft had a really good reputation during the Korean War. In fact, the 17th Bomb Wing flew over 15,000 sorties across the Korean War and they only lost 85 crewmen, which is a really good record for the amount of campaigns they ran. We'll also see a few new variants appear at this time: a night interdiction modified version, a reconnaissance variant that was new and improved. We'll start making a word. And after the Korean War, they're going to be shifted over to Southeast Asia, where they would be utilized by the CIA to help in Laos. They would take place at the Bay of Pigs invasion. Later on, they would actually be part of the earliest phases of the Vietnam War, where they would actually be disguised as Vietnamese aircraft before officially being transitioned to American aircraft once the United States officially entered the war. And it is here where the last major variant of the aircraft would be developed, the B-26K model, which would be later redesignated the A-26A for political reasons, as Thailand didn't allow U.S. bombers in their country, so an attack aircraft was permitted. Now, because of the versatility and adaptability of the aircraft, they would serve with other air forces as well. They would serve with the French Air Force, Indonesian, Portugal, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, all of which these nations utilize it in a combat role. However, a few other smaller nations did utilize it as just a support aircraft. Now, there were more than 20 military variants of the A-26 Invader developed. In addition to the B and C model as the main versions, we also have the RB-26, which is a reconnaissance variant, various experimental versions trying different cockpits, different nose cones, different gun configurations. There was a U.S. Navy variant known as the JD-1, which is actually where the Navy will test one of its earliest ejection seats, as seen here in this photo. But they only built 2 of this aircraft before they basically abandoned it. Now, my personal favorite variant of this aircraft is one that they only built 1 and then they completely abandoned it. This variant, known as the XA-26F, utilized 2 high-speed propellers in addition to a turbojet engine that had a top speed of about 435 miles per hour, which is pretty good for a bomber. But the gains weren't enough for them to warrant production, and they abandoned it. Now, in addition to the military variants, there are civilian variants. The aircraft was extremely popular as a water bomber for usage in firefighting. As well, it was very popular to convert these aircraft into some of the first executive transports for civilian use. Now, because of the versatility of the aircraft, the survivability of it, and the fact that it was just an easy aircraft to fly, the last Air Force to retire this aircraft was Colombia in 1980, and the last civilian group to officially retire it was in the 1990s. Today, there's about 97 airframes in existence in various states, everything from static display models to some being restored to quite a few actually in flying shape and being utilized around the world. But there you have it, a look at the A-26 Invader, a rather unique aircraft that went from being basically just a very simple upgrade to the A-20 that was not very much liked, to proving its worth because of its adaptability and multifunction, and later on being utilized by civilians across the world, showing its versatility continued even into the 21st century. But that's it for today. I thank you for joining me. I look forward to talking to you on the next time.